Hi, I'm Kendra Fauth-Edwards, and welcome to the Cardon Resource Hub. And today I have Laura Noblitt with me, and we're going to kind of talk about one of those really tough conversations when you're wondering if a senior or a family member, your parents, anyone really should still continue to be driving. It's one of those things that everyone really holds on to, and it's really difficult because that means it's their independence, and it's really hard. So it's something we have a lot of conversations about, so I'm really excited to have Laura here with us today. So Laura, I'm going to turn it over to you to kind of talk through how does that conversation go and what types of things should what kind of talking points should they have when they, approach a loved one?
Thank you, Kendra, and thank you to Cardon for allowing me to speak today and share information about a topic that's very near and dear to me regarding driving competence and how, as a family or a loved one, make the decision when it's time to start the conversation or when it's time to take additional steps from there. I'm an occupational therapist. I've been in practice for 36 years. I am now a senior myself, and the last 16 years, I have worked as a certified driving rehab specialist. And that means I have a special accreditation from ADED, ADED, and they have extensive training. We had to go for a week down to Florida to learn how to take the wheel in various situations, drive from the passenger side of the car. And already, we knew a lot about medications, medical conditions, but not a whole lot about driving other than what we did from a day-to-day basis. But we learned a lot during that training, and then we took a pretty rigorous test. And so I've got my certification. I started my company, Senior Driving and Mobility Services, and 2 years ago, I brought my daughter on. She's my partner in this, and she's also an occupational therapist and a CDRS. So today, I'm going to start by talking about some warning signs and specific factors that you might need to consider. There are some new statistics. Now they're 2021, so those are the newest we have right now, but it's showing a trend toward more older drivers, 75 and over, remaining on the road. And it showed that 61% of drivers with a mild cognitive impairment or worse are still driving, and even if their families have concerns about them being on the road. Also, we've got an uptake in people dying, older drivers dying in motor vehicle accidents due to the trauma that they sustain in an accident. And so, long story short, people are living longer and they're driving longer. And sometimes they need help knowing when it's time to stop. There's certain medical and cognitive conditions that will throw up either a yellow caution flag or a red flag saying, hey, we need to possibly make sure this person's skills are not declining. And that would be a physician, a son, a daughter, a wife, a husband, anybody that's close to that person. So some of these conditions are like mild cognitive impairment. That's not yet a dementia, but it can transition. Dementia, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's disease, certain arthritic conditions, neuropathy, where people cannot feel the bottoms of their feet, that therefore pedal management becomes very difficult. Stroke and head injury people, and people with serious vision issues, glaucoma, macular degeneration, diabetic retinopathy, and many that I've found over the years that I didn't even know existed. There's also a lot of medications out there that interact with one another that make it unsafe for drivers to drive. And I found drugs.com And I subscribe to that, and it sends me updates on drugs that have been stopped and what's approved, what's not approved. But they have an interaction checker on there, and you're able to put either your medicines or your loved one's medicines in there and see what some of the side effects or interactions might be, which is helpful. You never want to stop a medication, but it helps you start the conversation with a doctor to see if they're all necessary. Now I'm going to talk about some of the warning signs that are out there. I have a book that it's from the Hartford, and most of us that have been in the medical profession know about these publications. If you search the Hartford senior drivers or older drivers, they have a whole section. They've done extensive research across many disciplines to look at senior driving. They've come up with all kinds of conversation starters, when it's time to start the conversation, when it's time to move to a stronger conversation, and when it's just time to take control. And I hate to say that. I've been a daughter myself. I had to face this with my mother, and I was a driving evaluator at that point. And but when it's your own, loved one, it's different. So they have warning signs in that book that are just really, really good. And I'm going to just run through 12 real quickly. So the most important thing you can do, which was an eye opener for me, is actually ride with your loved one. If you're brave enough to do that, and if you're not afraid to do that, if you are, that's where somebody like me and my colleagues come in, and because we do it every day. So, but that's really the only way you can see how they're truly driving. You can't just base it on no reported accidents, no traffic stops, because some of us have guardian angels floating over our heads. So if you feel like your kids or grandkids are not safe to be with this person, then that is a big red flag. So that means further action probably needs to be taken. When you're riding with them, look at their backing up skills. A lot of my clients, when I test their trunk rotation, they can only get about this far around to each side. They can't look behind them anymore. They have back issues, or they have tight trunk rotators, sorry. And those all can keep a person from fully checking their surroundings. And a lot of the people that have, most of them have older cars, but some do have newer cars with the safety equipment, but they don't always use it, and they don't know how to use it in some cases. People that become easily distracted in the car. So if you're riding with your loved one and you notice that they are distracted, and they can be distracted auditorily or visually. So they can be distracted by something in the environment, and that'll affect their lane management. So look for that. Look for incorrect signaling, and that would be no signaling, or signaling too early, signaling too late, or leaving the turn signal on if they're hard of hearing. Scrapes or dents on the car, mailbox, or garage. Most of my clients say, well, I didn't do that. I came out of the grocery and there it was. And that, I'm not saying that they're lying, but, most people don't like to admit that they're dings and that they've actually done it to their own vehicles. Also, look at the tires to see if they're running up over curbs or scuffing their tires on the edge of curbs. Failure to notice traffic signals and road signs. So I had a driving evaluation this morning, and she ran 2 stop signs while I was with her. And she said, well, no one was standing there. They were pedestrian crossings, but I told her a stop sign is a stop sign, and you've got to come to a complete stop. So that was not good. On my road sign, traffic sign test, people miss an average of 5 out of 20, with almost everyone missing the lane ending sign. And that can be bad if a person is in a lane that's ending and they don't know, and they change lanes at the last minute. And I've been in the car when that's happened before. driving at inappropriate speeds. Are they driving too fast, too slow? Are they driving an appropriate speed in a school zone? And also using a co-pilot. It used to be a big no-no and a pretty much a fail if someone had to use a co-pilot to tell them how to get somewhere, to cue them on directions, or to cue them on operational at the vehicle, operation of the vehicle. But now they backed away on the cueing for destination, and they're allowing people to, if you always have someone riding with you, to give those kind of cues, but not how to operate a motor vehicle. That's never okay. Then lane changes, especially left hand lane changes, with the protected and unprotected left-hand turns. When they introduced the yellow arrow, they didn't explain to a lot of our senior clients what that meant. So that was confusing for a lot of people, and it still is. Turn lanes, sometimes people will veer into a turn lane when they want to go straight, and instead of going straight, instead of turning, they go ahead and go straight. And that's not good either. And that is, poor judgment on their part. I tell them if they get in the wrong lane, they should go ahead and turn and get turned back around. Getting lost in familiar places, lane management, driving left and right of center in their lane, and confusing the gas and the brake pedal. And that happens more often than you think. It's happened to quite a few of my clients who's taken out the front of their doctor's offices. One man took out the front of a CVS store, and my own brother-in-law was run over a month or a year ago in a parking lot in Washington State at a grocery by a woman that an elderly woman got her car in reverse and hit the gas and couldn't get it stopped and crushed him between his car and her car. So he's still in recovery for that and probably will be for 2 more years. You don't want something catastrophic like that to happen. And also just stopping in traffic for no apparent reason. I've had clients stop in the middle of roundabouts, anticipating that someone's going to pull in, but they're going to get rear-ended if they stop in the middle of a roundabout once they're in it. So roundabout management in its own is difficult for a lot of my seniors. So I'm going to go over some resources here really quickly. Like I mentioned, the Hartford, the Alzheimer's Association is a great resource, lots of information online. I think almost all of their information's online now, and they have plenty of phone numbers to call for support. I have a website at seniordriving.com, and I have quite a few resources there. And there's just a plethora of information if you Google senior drivers, because we have a lot of them out there now. I'm going to just talk briefly about what's involved in a comprehensive driving evaluation, and that is something that I do, and my colleagues that have a CDRS, we're the only ones in Indiana that the Bureau of Motor Vehicles will let do a driving evaluation. So it takes anywhere from 3 to 3.5 hours. My particular practice model is that I go to my clients. So I go to them and we do a clinical first, and that takes a couple of hours. And I look at vision, I assess reaction time, cognition, focus, attention. I look at their medical history, their medicines, and their functional mobility in the home, how they get by in the home, can they set up their own medications, different things like that. And then I do a general road sign and road rules quiz, and then if they pass that, and that takes a couple of hours to get through, then we go forward with the on-road. And that I'm one of the few that will allow a client to drive their own car, and I only do that if I feel like it's safe to do that. So I will I have a driver's ed car with a gas and brake on my side, but it just depends because a lot of my seniors do not think they can drive anybody else's car. And I don't want that to be the reason they can't drive. I do try to keep people on the road if I can. So I want to optimize their passing. So, and at the end, we go to like 4 or 5 destinations. I have them park. If they're interstate drivers, I do have them get on the interstate. If they're not, I don't. And at the end, we return and I go over all the results. And typically, it's one of 3 outcomes. It's either you pass without restriction, you do not pass, or you pass with restriction, which means maybe no non-daylight, no interstate driving, no long distance driving. And then I give them the choice to one of two. If you just if they don't pass, there's one of 2 choices to make. Either they can surrender their driver's license for a state identification card, or I am obligated to report them to the Bureau of Motor Vehicles. And that almost always ends up in them losing their driver's license. But I always follow it up with alternative mobility recommendations and suggestions, because that can be a pretty catastrophic time when they find that out. So there is a form online. It's form 54750, and that is kind of I call it the last resort form. It's on BMV's website. And then anybody can report a concern. And they don't find out who it is unless it's somebody like me, a CDRS. I just learned that they do tell them that we turn in their reports, but I tell them anyway. So they have a heads up on that. But family, neighbors, doctors, they never find out who's done that. So that is the last resort, because that triggers ability review, and that means they have to have paperwork turned in from the physician, and they have to take a driving evaluation if they're going to be able to continue driving. So that's it. That's what I have for today.
I appreciate that so much, Laura. That was such good information. And I know that, so do they contact you directly? Do they call you? Do they send an email? What's the best way? Because I know that there are going to be a lot of individuals out there that could really use you as a resource, because I learned so much just from all of that information. So I appreciate that very much. But what's the best way for them to reach you?
The best way for them to reach me, I'm always available by phone, and I'm not afraid to give that out. That's 317-489-0804. I literally spend probably 1/4 of my day on the phone with concerned families. All I have to have is a family recommend it, but they've got to get their loved one to agree to it. A physician order, which in 16 years, I've never really had many physicians turn me down on that. I typically get my orders from physicians, social workers, other healthcare professionals, or families contact me. And occasionally clients will call me because they've been told they need to do one. And also seniordriving.com has a lot of my information too.
That's great. Thank you so much for all of the information. We appreciate your time today, Laura.
Thank you.